Hi everyone and welcome back to The Luca Lifestyle, your guide to understanding food, health information and fat diets. Now my name is Madeline Lucas and I am a nutritionist and dietitian from Australia, passionate about helping to share my knowledge with as many people as will take the time to listen. In case you're new, I post videos here on YouTube every single Monday on a new nutrition topic. The last 2 weeks I've been posting about calories, kilojoules, what the differences are and where you find them, and how to calculate your own energy requirements without using an online calculator. And I will have both of those videos linked up in the top right hand corner in the cards of this video, as well as in the description box if you want to go check them out at the end of the video. But today I'm going to be talking about all things macronutrients, what they are, where they come from, how much energy is in each, and most importantly, the oxidation hierarchy. Now this is something that most fitness bloggers or Instagrammers do not know about, and essentially the oxidation hierarchy talks about the order in which our bodies actually metabolize and use these nutrients. So we're going to get to that at the end of today's video. Lastly, all my social media will be linked in the description box down below if you want to go follow me anywhere else. My Instagram and TikTok are both just at The Luca Lifestyle, and my website will also be linked down there, which is www.thelucalifestyle.com, where you can find exclusive ebooks and meal plans and all that kind of good stuff, as well as the opportunity to set up a one-on-one consultation with me to dive deeper into your own personal health goals. But let's get into today's video. So what are macronutrients? Simply, these are nutrients that our bodies need in large amounts. Macro means large and nutrient is things that our bodies need. In contrast, we also do have micronutrients, which, in case you can't already guess, are nutrients that our bodies need in very small amounts. But if you want to know more about those, then give this video a thumbs up and comment down below to let me know to make a video on that in the future. So which are the macronutrients? I've tried my best with the lighting for this video. We're using natural lighting, so if it dims in and out, that is why, but I was hoping it would give us less glare on this whiteboard, but apparently not. I'm trying my best, but I might have to retire the whiteboard pretty soon if I can't sort out the lighting situation, but we're gonna give it a try. What are the macronutrients? Most people will be familiar with carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, but a lot of people actually forget that there is a fourth macronutrient that we need to be mindful of, and that is alcohol. Now, while I mentioned earlier that macronutrients were nutrients our bodies needed in large amounts, alcohol, of course, doesn't quite fit this description because it is not something that our bodies need, let alone in large quantities. But due to the fact that it is very high energy density, which means that for a small amount of the nutrient, so a small amount of alcohol contains a large amount of energy, much like our other macronutrients. So even though our bodies don't actually need it and actually tend to work better without it, it does still count as a macronutrient and in some instances can contribute heavily to our daily intake. Speaking of energy density, or just energy of macronutrients, each of these macros will have a different energy density, meaning that for 1 gram of the nutrient, they will contain a different amount of kilojoules. So, what are they? Let's start at the top with carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates contain 16 kilojoules per gram of carbohydrate. So what this means is that for every 1 gram of carbohydrate within a food, it's going to contain 16 kilojoules. Fats are, as I'm sure you can expect, the highest. So for 1 gram of fat, it's actually equal to 37 kilojoules. Now, proteins is very similar to carbohydrates at 17 kilojoules per gram. In fact, when you convert these to calories instead of kilojoules, most people will just round this down to both being equal to 4 calories per gram. But with kilojoules, we can get a little bit more accurate, and we're talking 17 kilojoules for protein and 16 for carbohydrates. Now, alcohol isn't quite as high as fats, but it's significantly higher than the other two at 29 kilojoules per gram. At 29 kilojoules per gram. Now, before we move on, I want to make it perfectly clear that taking carbs, for example, this doesn't mean that 1 gram of a carbohydrate food, say bread, this doesn't mean that 1 gram of bread equals 16 kilojoules, because bread, while classified as a carbohydrate by most people, is not actually 100% carbohydrate. Within the bread, you also have some fat, some protein, fiber, sodium, and all of these other nutrients that do still contribute to the overall makeup of the food. Take this bread, for example, which is just the one that I had in my house at the moment. 1 serving of this bread, which is equal to 2 slices, and that equals about 50 grams according to the back of the packet. 50 grams of this bread contains 21 grams of carbohydrates. So that actually indicates that instead of being 100% carbs, like a lot of people think, this bread actually only contains 42% carbohydrates. So including the 21 grams of carbohydrates per serving of this bread, you're also going to get 7.5 grams of protein. So this equals about 15% protein within this bread, and 3.8 grams of fat, making up about 3.8% of the total weight. I just wanted to use this example to illustrate that even a typical carb food isn't actually 100% carbohydrates, and these calculations over here, or these energy densities, are purely for the nutrient, not for the food group. Most foods do contain all 3 of these macronutrients, well, 3 of the major macronutrients if we just ignore alcohol for a second. Most foods will contain all 3, if not, they'll at least contain 2. Very few foods, other than, say, pure sugar, are gonna contain just carbohydrates or just any of the other nutrients. Okay, let's rein it back in a little bit. I know we dived a little bit deep there into the makeup of foods, but what else is there to discuss? I do want to delve a little bit deeper into each of these macronutrients in future videos to come. So for the next 4 videos, we're going to do carbohydrates first, then fats, then proteins, then alcohol. But today I do want to give you just a brief description on what each of them are used for within the body. So carbohydrates, in case you didn't know, within the body, they are broken down and metabolized into glucose. And glucose is the preferred energy source of our brains. The brain can function on other nutrients such as ketones, but it really doesn't like to, especially not for long periods of time. Carbohydrates and glucose are the brain's favorite source of nutrients, and that's what it's going to go for every single time. Now, moving on to fats. People often like to hate on fats and think, we need to avoid fats, do this, do that, but fats still have an important role within our bodies. They do play a role in hormone production, but we'll get to that in its own separate video. But today I just want to briefly mention the role of polyunsaturated or monounsaturated fats. Increasing the intake of these healthy fats, these include things like fish oil, avocado oil. Increasing the intake of these actually helps to decrease your risk of developing heart disease and, in general, improve your heart health. And proteins, while most people know of them as being great for building muscle, they also have plenty of other functions. So yes, proteins are useful in cell regeneration when it comes to muscle, but they also play a role in skin, hair, and bone health within the cell level. And while alcohol may have a function within the body, that is as a drug or a depressant into our system. So we're just going to ignore alcohol for now, and again, we'll dive deeper into that in a few videos to come. Okay, so now let's discuss the oxidation hierarchy. Okay, so what is the oxidation hierarchy? Essentially, this is the order in which your body breaks down and metabolizes these nutrients to use them for energy. When it comes to macronutrients and metabolism, it's not a first come, first served kind of a system. Your body will always stick to the oxidation hierarchy, which we're going to explain now. Let's begin with carbs, shall we? As I mentioned, the brain loves to use carbohydrates, or what's broken down from carbohydrates, glucose, for fuel. So when you eat a food containing carbohydrates, the carbohydrate portion of that food is going to be metabolized and turned into glucose. That glucose then goes to the brain and your brain is happy. So these are going to be number 1 on the oxidation hierarchy. Then the body is going to move on to metabolizing proteins. Whatever glucose from the carbohydrates isn't used immediately can be converted and then stored within the body. However, it doesn't store as glucose, it is converted into a compound called glycogen, and that glycogen is stored within the liver to be used at a later date. However, our bodies tend to only be able to store about 1 day's worth of glycogen, but even that is a great backup for just in case you ever need it. Okay, but once carbohydrates are dealt with, the body is then going to move on to metabolizing proteins. Now, similarly to carbohydrates, the protein component of foods will be broken down into its smaller little segments. So to make up a protein, there are many amino acids. So the protein that you're eating is going to be broken down into its individual amino acids and then delivered around the body to do their functions. Unlike carbohydrates, excess proteins in the form of amino acids cannot be stored within the body, and they actually get used in fat storage instead. But again, more on this in the episode all on proteins. And lastly, we have fats. These are the last to be broken down and will be pushed to the bottom of the list, and always broken down last. This is why people tend to think of fats as being the bad guys, because fat is stored within our bodies, but that system is actually a really great one. While we might not love to have extra fat stored in our bodies do that as a protective mechanism against starvation. So if you've eaten a meal with carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, for example, maybe you've eaten a few slices of this bread here, the carbohydrate portion will be metabolized first, then proteins, and finally fats. But what happens if you have a glass of wine, a beer, or a shot of vodka at the same time? Well, alcohol is very impatient and always skips the queue all the way up to the top of the hierarchy. Of course, most people don't consume alcohol with every single meal, but if you are having alcohol, it will always be metabolized as number 1, meaning carbs, and now number 2, proteins, number 3, and fats, and number 4. So why does this happen? As I mentioned, alcohol cannot be stored within the body unlike the other nutrients, and therefore has to be metabolized and utilized within our bodies. So if you've ever thought of yourself or someone you know as having a big beer belly or as putting on a bunch of weight due to alcohol, technically that's not 100% true. While consuming alcohol does contribute to your overall energy intake of the day, the alcohol isn't what's converting to fat within your body. It is simply pushing fats further and further down the list so that less of these fats or even proteins are actually needed as energy at that time. So to summarize, there are 4 macronutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and alcohol. Each of these nutrients have a different energy density, meaning for 1 gram of each of these nutrients, there is going to be a different amount of energy or kilojoules within it. And this is of course different to the weight of the actual food itself, because most foods are made up of 3 different nutrients: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, or at least 2 out of 3. And even carbohydrate foods such as bread actually are not 100% carbohydrates. Each macronutrient has a specific role within the body, which again, we're going to dive a lot more deeply into in the next few videos to come. And finally, the oxidation hierarchy is the rules by which your body follows when it comes to metabolizing these nutrients. Carbohydrates are usually metabolized first, but if alcohol is involved in the meal, then alcohol must be metabolized first, as there's no way for our bodies to store it. I hope this video helped to give you a little bit of an insight into macronutrients. Of course, over the next 4 weeks, I will be diving a lot deeper into each of the macronutrients in their own separate videos, but this was a good place to start. If you want to make sure you don't miss out on any of those future videos, then of course subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, and then you'll be notified every time we upload. If you liked today's video, I would love it if you could go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Not only does it let me know that you enjoyed the video and encourage me to make more in the future, but it also helps with the YouTube algorithm in getting these videos sent out to more people so that I can share my nutrition knowledge with even more people in the future. If you want to see more, be sure to check out my other social medias. I'm making new TikToks as we speak, and I upload regularly over on my Instagram. Again, both of those accounts are simply at Thaluka Lifestyle, so very easy to find. If you want to check out any of my exclusive ebooks or meal plans, they're available from my website, www.thalukalifestyle.com, linked in the description box as always. And on the website, you can even sign up for a one-on-one consultation with me to help you achieve your health or nutrition goals. But for now, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next Monday when we dive deeper into carbohydrates, all about what they are, where they come from, how much you actually need in a day, and so much more. And finally, remember that health is not a diet, it's a lifestyle.